family home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So some of you will remember on the last day of our Navadvip Parikrama, we visited the birthplace of Sarvabhauma. Because Sarvabhauma, he was born in Navadvip, but then he later moved to Puri. And he was like the principal court scholar, like he was part of the royal entourage in a sense, and very, very highly renowned within Jagannath Puri. In fact, I believe throughout India he had some renown. And he was in the Mayavad school, impersonal conception of the absolute, right? And we had some discussion about this in Navadvip. So he has a very interesting role in the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. We were mentioning that day in Navadvip, right? When Mahaprabhu left Navadvip area, he left his final stop was Shantipur, right, the home of Advaita Acharya. And after he took sannyas, then he spent 10 days like kind of saying goodbye to the Navadvip Bhaktas in Shantipur. And then he made his way to Jagannath Puri by the request of his mother, right? She wanted him to stay here. And he left with Nityananda Prabhu was mentioned. Anyone remember? Do you remember who else was mentioned? It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There were 4 who left with Mahaprabhu. And then along the way there was that incident, right, where Mahaprabhu, he's carrying his new sannyas staff, the danda it's called, and he went to bathe in a river and he gave it to Nityananda to hold, and Nityananda, for his own reasons, broke it into 3 pieces. Mahaprabhu came back, very upset, and we're going to go to that place, Danda Banga, breaking of the danda, place of the breaking of the danda. We're going to go there in the next couple of days. And so then Mahaprabhu, this is all part of the play, right, the Leela. Then Mahaprabhu expresses his anger. I only asked you one thing, to carry my danda, and you couldn't even do that. I'm not traveling with you anymore. And so he says, either you all go ahead or I'll go ahead. But we're not going together to Puri. And so they all agree, okay, you go first, we'll follow behind you some distance. And so for this reason, Mahaprabhu arrives alone to Puri. Immediately goes to the Jagannath temple to have darshan of Lord Jagannath, goes into this ecstatic state, showing all these symptoms, fainting, crying, trembling, hair standing on end, and the pandas, the priests in the temple, they think he's just some crazy, sentimental, fool. And they're like ready to beat him and throw him out of the temple. Fortunately, Sarvabhauma is there, and Sarvabhauma can recognize these are symptoms of divine love described in the scriptures. And so because he has this position in Puri, everyone listens to him, and so he takes Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu's unconscious. And we've just seen here, there is this underground tunnel. That's amazing, I never heard about that. There's this underground tunnel that comes from the Jagannath temple to here, to his home. So he carried Mahaprabhu through this tunnel, holding him in his arms. Perhaps he had some help. And then tends to his divine form in his home here for some time till Mahaprabhu comes to consciousness. And Sarvabhauma, he immediately feels this paternal affection and care for Mahaprabhu, and he's concerned because Mahaprabhu is this beautiful young sannyasi. It wasn't traditional for a young man to take sannyas. So how's he going to be able to maintain sannyas life? He's so young and beautiful. And so he's thinking, how can I help him become firm in his sannyas? And that's when he comes up with the idea to instruct him in Vedanta. You know some English? Little. Where are you coming from? You live here? Okay. Okay. From Orissa, not Puri.
No, we are from Ganjam.
Oh, you're coming for pilgrimage. Oh, very nice. Gaudiya Bhakta? Gaudiya Bhakta? Gaudiya Vaishnav? Oh, okay. So Sarvabhauma comes up with this idea. He's going to instruct Mahaprabhu in the teachings of the Vedanta, which is the penultimate text that Veda Vyas compiled amongst the Vedic literature, which is very much giving like essential spiritual advice in a kind of vague, hazy way. The first famous line is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now search after spirit, right? Give up all your pleasure seeking in this mundane world. Now search after spirit. And it's especially popular with those of the impersonal school. We also have our own Vaishnava interpretation of that. We'll discuss that more in Jaipur. There's a whole cool story there in Jaipur connected with that. So and we were mentioning this in Navadvip also. Sarvabhauma mentioned this idea to Gopinath, who was I can't remember, his brother-in-law, or I think his brother-in-law was Gopinath. Meanwhile, Gopinath is a firm, staunch Gaura Bhakta, so he's very angry about Sarvabhauma's stance. And how can you teach him anything? He's the Supreme Lord. And like this, and they have this whole debate. We talked about that in Navadvip. And then finally Mahaprabhu comes back to consciousnness, and Sarvabhauma tells him, I want to help you, and Mahaprabhu is just humbly accepting and embracing his real affection. Sarvabhauma had real affection for him, so he just accepted that. And also Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I can't remember if it was Gurudev or Srila Sridhar Maharaj, but they mentioned also, I heard this just recently, like Mahaprabhu was also, it was like he had a plan. Because Sarvabhauma, he had such a prominent position in Jagannath Puri. So if he could capture Sarvabhauma, that automatically so many others would also come. And that was exactly what happened, right? So Mahaprabhu was also playing the long game. So Mahaprabhu just humbly agreed, yes, please instruct me. And then there's this 7 days, right, of Sarvabhauma reading and discussing, explaining Vedanta to him. And Mahaprabhu is not saying a single word, not showing any expression, just quietly, humbly listening. Then at the end of 7 days, Sarvabhauma was wondering, like, is he an idiot? Does he not understand anything? Or why isn't he asking questions or comments? And so then finally he asks Mahaprabhu, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Don't you have any questions? You haven't said a single word. And then Mahaprabhu says, just matter of fact, to be frank, the verses of the Vedanta are themselves very clear, like bright sunlight. I can understand easily. But your explanations are like these clouds that are obscuring that bright sunlight. Your explanations are just making it all very complicated and very confusing. And Sarvabhauma was kind of like taken aback, and he said, who is this man? And then they get into some discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then this Atmarama verse comes up. And it's a famous verse in Bhagavatam, and Sarvabhauma is kind of like trying to recover his position. He gives some explanations of this Atmarama verse. And then Mahaprabhu gives, I think Sarvabhauma gave 9 explanations, and Mahaprabhu gave 16 explanations, something like that. And then Sarvabhauma was like, again, like, whoa, like, who is this guy? Like, this isn't an ordinary man. And then I believe that night, I don't remember how it happened. Did he maybe he had the Sadhbhuj vision at that time, and maybe he also had a dream. There was some revelation that came, a dream of the Sadhbhuj, was it?
I think so. He personally revealed to him.
Right.
I think here in this place.
Must have been.
Because there they have the.
That's the form, huh?
He's wearing a cloth, I guess, because he's.
So he had this confirmation in one form or another of the divinity of Mahaprabhu. And then after that he became this kind of like fanatic devotee of Mahaprabhu, and to the point that he wanted to change a verse in the Bhagavatam. It's a famous verse. I know you know that verse coming from Salt Lake City. What's Sudarshan's number one verse?
No pressure.
What's Sudarshan's verse?
Is it
Yeah.
I know the meaning of the verse.
You don't remember the Sanskrit? Tat te nukam. See?
It's something like that.
Yeah, you
But
do
I know
it.
I do know the meaning.
Tell us the meaning.
It's talking, about taking responsibility, basically. Not saying anything else is like anybody else's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Taking on the weight of our actions,
Mm-hmm.
and not putting it on others.
Okay, good.
It's my
Yeah, that's the essence of it. Tattenu kampam susunik shamano bunjane bhatma pritam vipakam hridvagu purvi vidadan namaste jiveta yomukti pade sa dayabak. So it's saying that, one who accepts responsibility for their own actions, their own karma, but even more than that, sees it as the anukampa, means the grace of the Lord. Then it says they will very soon become liberated from this world, right? Because they're no longer in this plane of action, reaction, blaming the environment, but they're actually accepting responsibility, correcting themselves, and in fact embracing the correction, seeing it as the mercy of the Lord. They're going to be let out of prison very soon, right? Because there's this heart transformation that's going on. Could you say the Sanskrit one more time? Tattenu kampam susamik shamano punjane vatma vitam vipakam hridvagu purvir vidadan namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sa dayabha. So this is the verse, the famous prayer of Lord Brahma, and in this verse it mentions mukti, right? Mukti, that this mukti means liberation. The verse is saying this person will be soon liberated from this world. So Sarvabhauma, he took issue with this because he became such a fanatic devotee. The thought of liberation became very distasteful to him. And normally, those of the impersonalist school, Mayavadis, they're all about mukti. It's all about it, like in Buddhism also. The whole goal is moksha, right? Liberation. That's what it's all about. So Sarvabhauma, he was a little upset, and he brought this point to Mahaprabhu, saying, we should change it. Why are we interested in mukti? Devotees are afraid when they hear the word mukti. We're not into it. Mukti is like a kind of spiritual suicide. We're just like merging into this oneness, and there's no connection with the Lord, there's no service. And so he suggested we change it to bhakti. Yo bhakti pade sadaiva. That they will very soon achieve devotion. That was how he wanted to change it. And he brought this point to Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu was laughing, and Mahaprabhu was so happy. And then he said, I appreciate your mood, Sarvabhauma, but we don't need to change the Bhagavatam. We don't need to go that far. And then Mahaprabhu also made the point that actually the deepest understanding of liberation is a devotional relationship with the Lord, right? Swadupena. There's one statement in the scripture. Muktir hidvanyatadupam swadupena yavastiti. It's saying that the real meaning of mukti is to be reinstated in one's natural position as a loving servant of the Lord. That's real liberation. That's the highest understanding of liberation. So Mahaprabhu reassured him, we don't need to change Bhagavatam, don't worry. We can understand it in this way with a devotional perspective, right? So Sarvabhauma was pacified. And then also Sarvabhauma, he wrote, it was a composition, I forget the name, maybe someone here remembers, like around 100 verses. He wrote in glorification of Mahaprabhu. And there were two in particular which are quite famous. I can't remember them. Ajnana, I I can't remember. They're included in, Srila Sridhar includes them in Prakana Jivanamrita, but they're glorifying Mahaprabhu and, describing how he has come to spread this movement of Sankirtan and so on. And that actually became this composition, because Sarvabhauma was so famous and respected in Puri, that composition spread very quickly, and it brought many people to the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. And then there's another incident with Sarvabhauma. I'm trying to remember this other verse. It's also from Lord Brahma's prayers. How does it go? Atapi te deva parambuja dvai prasada lishanu priyukta eva hi janata tatram.
For you too.
So previously, right, we mentioned that Sarvabhauma kind of had this little bit of a quarrel with his brother-in-law Gopinath, because when Sarvabhauma couldn't recognize Mahaprabhu's divinity, right? And in the course of that discussion, right, Gopinath, and we mentioned this in Navadvip, Gopinath, he mentioned it's not your fault. It's not your fault you can't recognize the Lord because you haven't received His grace. And he quoted, you can only recognize the Lord if you've received His grace, right? And Sarvabhauma was kind of annoyed, and he's like, well, how can you, what's the proof you recognize, what's the proof that you've received the mercy of the Lord? And Gopinath simply says, because I can recognize Him, so obviously I received His mercy. And at that time, Gopinath quotes this verse. It's also from the prayers of Lord Brahma, Takute Deva Paramujivai, saying that someone can endeavor to know the Lord for many, many lifetimes, but they will never be successful. However, if someone receives prashada leish, means just like a trace, you can use that for the Vrindavan. If someone receives just a trace, just a drop of mercy from the Lord, then they can easily know Him. Right? So Gopinath was kind of like preaching this to Sarvabhauma before his conversion, and Sarvabhauma didn't appreciate it very much. Then this is very funny. Fast forward like a few months later, and Sarvabhauma's become like this hardcore Gaura Bhakta, and there's this gathering on a rooftop with the king. And the king Prataparuja's there, Sarvabhauma's there, and there's maybe one other person, I can't remember who. And the king, and it's a beautiful scene actually. It's the king is watching 200 pure devotees, 200 Mahabhagavats arriving from Navadvip area. Navadvip Bhaktas coming to Puri to meet with Mahaprabhu. And this phrase is used there, Prema Nama Sankirtan. Like there's a Sankirtan going on, but it's not ordinary Sankirtan. It's in Prema, it's in like ecstatic love for the Lord. And so they're all like this 200 pure devotees coming down the road. They're all effulgent, they're all showing these divine symptoms. And the king is like completely astonished, and he's like, I've seen like many kirtans going on, but I've never seen a kirtan like this, And then he's also asking like, oh, who's this, who's that? And I think maybe Gopinath is there pointing everyone out. But in any case, the king, he's like kind of curious, and he also observes, it's very funny, that like normally when you come to a holy place, there are all these conventions that you follow. Like you're supposed to fast, you're supposed to shave your head, you're supposed to bathe in the river. Of course you have darshan of the deity. There are all these conventions, but the king is watching, astonished, because all these devotees like completely ignore all these things. And they come and they don't even go to the Jagannath temple. They just go straight to meet with Mahaprabhu. Not only that, but Mahaprabhu's sending for this opulent prasadam feast. So as soon as they arrive, they're having like this big feast. And normally you're meant to like fast when you come to a holy place. So the king's also like watching, like, what's going on? And then the devotees are explaining, well, you know, there are two different types of devotion. There's vidhi marg, according to rules and regulations. There's raga marg, spontaneous love from the heart. And this is a different type of devotion, you know. And then he also asks, the king asks, like, it's so obvious that Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord. Why is it that not everybody recognizes it? There's so much evidence in the scriptures. And then it's very funny. Then Sarvabhauma, he quotes the same verse that Gopinath had quoted to him before, the Satapi Te Deva Param Vujadvai, saying that you can only know the Lord by his mercy. Like just a few months ago, like, you know, he was the one who needed to be told that, and now he's preaching that to other people. It's very ironic.
It's like a transformation can be instant.
Right,
yeah.
right.
It's like a consciousness can change, like there's no time
Right.
for that transformation.
Right. And then lastly, I'll just tell this one last pastime. This is one of my most favorite pastimes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's when Sarvabhauma invites Mahaprabhu to take lunch. So that would have been here at his family home. And Sarvabhauma, and this was like a really special thing. Mahaprabhu, he got so many prasadam invitations. Like he would have lunch at different devotees' houses every day. He would be booked up for months because so many devotees were inviting him for prasad. And so Sarvabhauma was like so excited that he had the opportunity to invite Mahaprabhu here. And he also kind of like indicated he didn't want Mahaprabhu to come with any of his associates. He wanted Mahaprabhu to come alone so that he could just like freely serve Mahaprabhu. Because he knew Mahaprabhu would be shy to eat too much in front of other sannyasis, you know, other devotees. And so he wanted it to be this kind of like private lunch, you know, with just his family and Mahaprabhu. And so there's this whole scene described. Mahaprabhu comes in and he's seated at the table and it's Sarvabhauma personally cooks with his wife. And it's like this really huge spread. And in the beginning Mahaprabhu was like confused, like, this must be the prasadam for the deity, right? And I'll just take like a little portion of it. Mahaprabhu's like, and Sarvabhauma was like, this is all for you. You have to eat this. And they're bringing like one preparation after another preparation after another preparation. And meanwhile, now Sarvabhauma, he has a son-in-law called Amog or Amoga, he's drain inspector. Yeah, not such a pleasant fellow. And Sarvabhauma knows he won't be able to honor Mahaprabhu properly. So Sarvabhauma, you know, he's not invited to this event, right? Not only that, but Sarvabhauma is holding guard. He's standing guard at the door with a stick to make sure he can't come in. Because he's afraid he's going to be critical of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu will be disturbed in this intimate gathering. So he's literally at the door with a stick, like guarding. But then at a certain moment, he's like serving Mahaprabhu and he's not watching the door. And Amog like comes in. And immediately Amog starts insulting Mahaprabhu and saying, what kind of a sannyasi is this? He's enjoying all this opulent prasadam and look at all these preparations. Sannyasis are supposed to be renounced. You know, what is this? And he's like laughing and criticizing Mahaprabhu. And Sarvabhauma, he's absolutely devastated. He chases his son-in-law out. And Mahaprabhu is just laughing. Mahaprabhu's not disturbed at all. And Sarvabhauma is like profusely apologizing, you know, please forgive me, please forgive my son-in-law. And Mahaprabhu's like, don't worry, no, he's right actually. Like, I shouldn't be eating so much. No problem, it's okay. And so anyway, you know, the lunch comes to an end, Mahaprabhu goes home. But Sarvabhauma, he's still like absolutely devastated. And him and his wife together, they're both like crying and they're fasting and they're like cursing their son-in-law to die, and they're like, we hope that our daughter will become a widow, and they're like seriously thinking about how to resolve it. It's like real like high Indian drama moment, you know. And you know, when people start fasting, that's when you know like something's going down. It happens in your family too. With his mom. It's like an Indian thing, you know? So they're all like fasting and Sarvabhauma and his wife are like discussing how are we going to resolve this situation and like seriously and Sarvabhauma's like, maybe I should just kill him, you know, then he'll be relieved of his offense. And then he's like, well, it says in the scriptures it's an offense to kill a Brahmin, and we're Brahmins, so I better not kill him. And I could just kill myself, but I'm also a Brahmin, so that won't be good. So they're all like, what are we going to do? And this is going on for some days. And meanwhile, Amog, he becomes deathly sick, like with cholera or something, in his residence. He's like on his deathbed. And Mahaprabhu, a few days have gone by, Mahaprabhu doesn't know what's going on. Then he gets some news, and then he comes to the home of Sarvabhauma, and there's this beautiful scene. He goes to the bed of Amog, and he places his hand on his chest, and he tells him, there's this beautiful expression where he tells him that the heart of a Brahmin is supposed to be very clean. So why have you allowed the witch of envy to come and sit there? Something like that. You know? And it's a beautiful expression for all of us, actually. You know, that, you know, we are pure by nature. And why do we let these ugly things come into our heart? Right? Let us try to live our higher self. Right? And Mahaprabhu then tells him, then there's this one line, he's like, Amog, just get up and take the holy name of Krishna. Don't worry about anything else. And then he also reassures, and Amog gets up and his illness leaves him. And then he also reassures Sarvabhauma, like, I will never take any offense from you or your family members. And there's this line, like, even a dog that's like a part of your family, a part of your household, I will love them, you know. So I also love Amog. I can never take any offense from him. Anyone dear to me, you know, anyone related to them is also dear to me. So don't worry about anything. Very, very beautiful, beautiful pastime. And so Amog, he's transformed, of course, and becomes a great devotee of Mahaprabhu. So that would have been here in the family home of Sarvabhauma. I don't know how much of the original construction is real. Obviously something, right? We saw this underground tunnel.
This is pretty ancient.
That looks pretty ancient. Maybe this was their temple space or something.
Giri Govardhan.
Giri Govardhan.
Guru Parampara.
And it's the same plaque as the our mud thing, right?
What did you
Is
say?
it similar, the our mud thing, or is different?
Actually, you're right. It's showing the Gaura Bhaktas in Sankirtan, isn't it? Wow.
That's our mud thing.
Yeah, it's very similar, yeah.
The Panditji here wants to say something.
Lord Sarvabhauma back to Guru Parampara.
Speak a little louder.
Yes, it's my name, Das Krishna.
Okay.
जी खास सार्वभौम कापड़ लीला पर दास को पिताम्बर दास को माधव